Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome back to the Pelle Neroth Taylor and Martin Sieff show. Well, today's another principles only. I think everyone's on holiday. Doesn't matter.
It's
They de
August. Yeah.
they deserve their holidays, don't they? So Martin, we're going to talk a little bit about the new great hope of the Democrat Party and a sign of how the Democrat Party is shifting in the United States. We had Mamdani elected a few months ago, and he's become a poster boy for your offspring and that whole generation. And interestingly, like Matt Hines, whom I spoke to yesterday, a guy in his 30s or 40s, looks to me like an impeccable Southern conservative lawyer. He's saying, oh, Mamdani's okay. So I thought, well, if Mamdani's magic reaches over into that unlikely demographic for Mamdani's natural supporters, then there's maybe we're seeing a sea change in American politics, and we're there to catch the trends early. But obviously, well, I want to take just before you start off. It's the 6th of August today, and it's Hiroshima Day. It's 81 years since the bomb went off in Hiroshima, followed by the one 3 days later in Nagasaki, and we a lot of our coverage, a lot of our talks have got the shadow of the bomb, which maybe the younger shows wouldn't have, because I was very aware of the dangers of nuclear war, and Hiroshima is I didn't read up on this, but I mean, we all could quote from memory. We can also see that this 13 kiloton bomb dropped at 8:15 a.m. local time by the Enola Gay. Apparently, they're considering Kyoto and many other places. And I think Nagasaki the unlucky one where they were going to choose another, and then the clouds over the other destination nearby to Nagasaki, and they dropped over Nagasaki instead. Incredible how life can change just like that. Anyway, that was 3 days later. I think Hiroshima was pre-chosen because it hadn't been bombed before, and it was a big port. And 13 kiloton bomb devastated much of the city with 60,000 instantaneous deaths. And the only thing we see that lasted was, I think, it was a kind of convention center because it was made of concrete. So everything else was flattened. And that convention center, now with its broken dome, is still some kind of peace building. And so every year, I think many politicians have been going to Hiroshima. It might be on the news tonight, and sort of talking about peace and so on. And I remember my favorite, Olof Palme, did so back in the 80s. To me, it's a much better place for pilgrimage than going to the Green Goblin's capitals, Kiev. That's where people normally go to commune. So watch out for Hiroshima coverage tonight, and never forget that nuclear bomb is the threat of nuclear war is ever present. At least global warming will take some time, and we've got 13 kiloton bomb. Well, I mean, I don't. I think that the great powers have capped their big nuclear missiles at 1 megaton now. It used to be they had one at 50 megatons once, dropping over Siberia, and the windows in Helsinki, thousands of kilometers away, were rattling. But no, it's still 1 megaton bomb could wipe out much of London. So lest we forget. But Martin, you're going to say talk about something slightly more hopeful, perhaps today, or there are new political trends happening in the United States. What do you make of this guy who's just been elected in Minnesota?
He hasn't been elected yet. His
Ah,
name is Abdul El-Sayed, and he has just won the Democratic primary race. American elections do reflect not overwhelming public opinion, but usually they're shifted. Small numbers of passionate people commit on one side or another. And they shape a perception that then comes to reshape the country. So it is, in the long run, it can reflect the democratic will. But as is always the case in human politics, it's not simple or straightforward. But it's coming and it's here, and it's not in isolation. It's part of a very profound national trend. The Republican Party is split, as we've discussed before, between uh, it used to be between Trump's MAGA people and the old right. Now it's a different split because the MAGA people largely have been weaponized by the old establishment and are gung ho for the war because they watch Fox News and they believe anything Fox News tells them, good or bad, and it's overwhelmingly bad. Uh, Uh, but there's still a split in the Republican Party. The split is between the isolationists, many of whom used to be MAGA but have left MAGA in disgust. People who watch Tucker Carlson, for example, or Colonel Doug McGregor, or a lot of the people on YouTube in the podcast alternative media, which, as you well know, has a huge penetration now and a credibility in America that it has. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe it's reached anything comparable remotely in any major European country whatsoever. It's been frozen out in every major European
Mm.
country so far, but in America, it's big. The Republican Party is split. But on the other hand, the Democratic Party, it's been well known to be split. But the pro Israel old Democrats, who are also the people, the old liberal internationalist establishment, they support Zelensky, they support NATO. They're liberal internationalists who seem to be the good guys from the 1930s to the 1960s. But when it all went sour in Vietnam, they kept the faith. At home, the welfare reforms destroyed the black family life and a lot of white family life too, and created social pathologies that are still ravaging America to this day, even though they were rolled back somewhat in the 1980s and 1990s by people as different as Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton alike. They were both wrestling with these issues, and they made some progress on it. But while they seem to be discredited, they never went away. They never went away. It's like the generation that supports Starmer and the Labour Party and Andy Burnham in Britain today. Not Marxists, not working class remotely, but soft, not even middle class anymore, but the children of the middle class who can't afford to be middle class themselves anymore. But they don't work, and they have ideals in different ways. And for 40 years, they went along with the Democrats, who became increasingly outrageous and corrupt. Andrew Cuomo and Hillary Clinton, both from political base in New York significantly, were both the classic examples of this. Utterly corrupt, utterly incompetent, utterly inept, incredibly arrogant, and disgusting as human beings, not even pretending to be charming. You had their equivalents out on the West Coast in California, like Adam Schiff and others, and from New York, the sententious, holier than thou Senator Chuck Schumer. A whole generation like this, and it seemed they were there forever. Well, forever has come and gone. The new generation is emerging. You mentioned Mayor Mamdani, a Muslim mayor of New York City, who significantly has very strong Jewish support among young Jewish voters and students and idealists and people in their 20s and 30s in New York City. That's never mentioned. He has very strong, he's very anti-Zionist, but he has very strong young Jewish support, young Jewish Americans who are appalled and disgusted by what they, even in the control media and certainly on YouTube, what they see has been happening in Gaza over the past year. And this is very important. This is not a victory for anti Semites, it's a victory for anti Zionists. And there are a lot of anti Semites who will support Mr. Mamdani as well. But it's not just Mr. Mamdani. That's the point. Even before yesterday's Democratic primaries across the country, you had either Muslim or pro Gaza, is very critical of Israel, very anti-AIPAC, very anti-Zionist candidates becoming mayors in cities like Minneapolis and out on the West Coast. But now we're moving up the political chain. Andy Burnham was mayor of Manchester. In order to be a contender for prime minister, he had to get into parliament. He won the Makerfield election. Now, within days after that, he became prime minister, and that idiot Keir Starmer still doesn't know what hit him. But Andy Burnham, when the time was right, moved rapidly up the political ladder. He didn't have national power in Manchester, right? Or for that matter, in Makerfield, but he sure does now as prime minister, right? We see the same process happening on a massive, much more massive and profound, lasting scale now in the United States. Because in the Democratic elections yesterday, in New York City alone, four strongly anti-Netanyahu, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel candidates, one of whom is very Jewish and a member of his local synagogue and proud of it, very high-profile Jewish, called Michael Lasher. He'd be a delightful man, at least one might love or loathe his politics. But apart from anything else, he's a happy family man, he's a nice guy, and he's a practicing stage magician. He performs for kids in charity shows all across New York. So you would actually have a practicing magician in Congress. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
But the point is, he ran on a very strongly anti-Zionist ticket, and he was one of four candidates for the House. Who won their primaries, which means under the way the American system works with so many safe seats, the key election is the primary election. If you win your own party's nomination in a safe Republican area or a safe Democratic area, then you simply walk home, you stroll home in November, you are a cert to sit in Congress. And so what do yesterday's results mean? It means that from New York City alone, four new generation Democrats in their 30s and 40s, far younger than the old guard, hugely critical of the old guard, supportive of Mayor Mamdani and his domestic policies, very much on the socialist left. Whether you love the left or loathe the left, it is happening. And I predicted a lot of people loathed me for predicting the rise of the MAGA right in my 2015 book, Cycles of Change. And I did, but I predicted something else in that book too. What I said was both parties are going to radically change. The Republican Party is going to move radically to the isolationist right and to the populist right and close the borders and combat immigration fiercely and even in ugly ways, but it is going to do so. And people, including members of my own family, said, how can you say this, Dad? How can you say this, Marty? Are you becoming a fascist? Are you becoming a Nazi? No, I'm telling you, whether I love it or loathe it, what is going to happen. I'm the weatherman, like the guy Andrew Scott plays in the movie Pressure, who advises President Eisenhower, hold back D-Day for a day. No, you can risk if you go charging in that, because the weather is going to be this way and then it's going to be that way. And Andrew Scott's character, Group Captain Stagg, isn't in favor of storms. He wants D-Day to succeed, but he's the weatherman. He says, this is the way the weather is going to be because we have the reports coming in. This is the pattern. And this is what I wrote in 2015. There is going to be a sharp swing to the right in America, and we had that first under President Trump. But I also said, and I thought it would come much sooner, but it didn't, but it's coming now. I also said there is going to be a shift to the anti-Israel, anti-liberal internationalist, anti-free trade, anti-capitalism, principled left. That doesn't mean it'll work. It doesn't mean
anti-war left as well.
Oh, very anti-war left.
Right. Okay,
extremely anti-war left.
Yeah.
Because that's the key difference. The old generation of the Democrats were just the way Dean Acheson and Harry Truman were in the 40s when they happily charged into war in Korea. And then Lyndon Johnson, who brings in very strong, not socialist, but social democratic reforms in America, including Medicare and Medicaid, and boosts in Social Security. Many of the things Johnson brought in were admirable. Other things he meant well, like welfare, but they backfired catastrophically. Because, of course, Johnson, like George W. Bush Jr., was from Texas. And people from Texas tend to be, they can be brilliant. So outstanding universities and historians and schools of higher education in Texas. But in politics, the politics on the national scale, Texan politicians tend to be broad stroke either to the right or to the left. They're not subtle like Franklin Roosevelt was or Dwight Eisenhower was. They make broad sweeping strokes. So even when they get good things done, they get a lot of bad things done too. But what we're seeing now is the other shoe that I predicted in crisis cycles of change, which I stress to our viewers. If you haven't bought it, buy it off Amazon Kindle now. My wife had to publish it for me because we were rejected by 140 publishers. I have earned a place in the Guinness Book of Records, I believe, for more rejections for a serious, sober book than anyone else has ever had before. I'm not talking about nonsense like the world being flat or Horberger ice or the world ending according to the Mayan prophecies in 2012 or nonsense like that. No, I was looking at American politics from Thomas Jefferson in 1800 all the way through Barack Obama. And I predicted before Donald Trump declared his candidacy, and Donald Trump is not even mentioned once by name in the 2015 book, but I predicted the MAGA rise and the populist takeover of the Republican Party. But I also predicted the left-wing radicalization of the Democrat Party too. And it didn't happen in 2015-16, but it didn't happen in 2020. Because they faked the election to get Joe Biden in to prevent Bernie Sanders, who would have been That's a phony anyway, going in.
But that Mamdani,
he's a total
his phoniness was, but still, people believed in Bernie Sanders, and so there is a substantial wing. Yeah.
I mean, he ran twice. On both occasions, all the liberal Democrat idiots, he led them by the nose and they believed him. And he conveniently folded to Hillary Clinton first time in 2016. And then in 2020, he folded to, of all people, Joe Biden, a figure even more incompetent and ludicrous than Hillary Clinton. You would think that is possible.
Sorry, do you think Bernie Sanders was in on this? Was he like a fake candidate, controlled opposition?
Yes, of course he was. Of course he was. And he'll deny it. And at a conscious level, he might even pass a polygraph test. But of course he was in on it because he never fought it. Did he really want to be president of the United States? No, he never fought to be president of the United States. He folded in 2016. He folded when 750,000 votes in New York City in the Democratic primary were stolen from him. They're alone. And there was a great deal of evidence of this at the time. And it was never reported in the mainstream media, but it was widely monitored and investigated by the alternative media at that time. And Sanders knew this, and he did not raise a finger. He did not make a peep. He was a coward. He was a hypocrite. He likes to sit in the Senate and be courageous and call for improvements in healthcare. How courageous, how moral. He puts forward all these heroic amendments, which he knows will be rejected.
Right.
And he still brings the United States Air Force Fat Cat contracts home to Vermont every time. Right. He's a coward and a liar and a hypocrite, and he always was. And the younger generation of Democrats are finally waking up to this. Mayor Mamdani, whatever else you might say about him, good and bad, I believe he's a hypocrite. I certainly no coward. He believes what he says what he believes, and he tries to push his policies through.
All right.
There's a lot of opposition.
So you don't think he's a younger Bernie Sanders who's going to fold?
Not remotely. No, of course not.
Right.
And neither is Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan. Now, the results in the Democratic primary were hugely significant. First, as I said, in New York City alone, Mayor Mamdani was no fluke. He was not isolated. He endorsed all those four candidates, and they all won hugely. But where did they win? They won in the most Jewish city in America. If you're tired of anti-Semitism in New York, you're never going to win an election. But these people are not anti-Semites, they are anti-Israel, which is a different matter. And it can turn over. I mean, politics, like human beings, are fungible, we're changeable. Maybe some of them, certainly not Mr. Michael Lasher, I think, but some of them may end up making anti-Semitic statements or anti-Semitic policies down the line. The Jewish community, which is already highly divided in New York City, may change again. But right now, you have the most Jewish city in America, arguably in the world in terms of population, because the Jewish population of New York, or people who are descended from people of Jewish background, is comparable with that of Tel Aviv, the largest, most populous city in Israel. And who are they voting for? They are voting for a new generation of Democrats who are anti-war, who loathe the war in Gaza, who loathe Mr. Netanyahu, who are determined for the war to stop. And
Mm.
AIPAC, the enormously powerful, wealthy, feared pro-Israel lobby in Washington. And it wasn't always that way. There's anti-Semites claim, oh, Israel has always controlled American politics through AIPAC. No, not true. Never true. And AIPAC always made the curse of the Israelis and the curse of the Jews. The imagination, we have it in Ireland, in Northern Ireland too. The Irish in general are more sensible. But the fantasy of Jews is always, we are as powerful as our anti-Semitic enemies say we are. We are the center of the world. No, you're a very small minority in America. You're a very small country in the Middle East. And it therefore behoves you to act the way Ireland has had to act, even when it didn't want to, on the world stage over the last 100 years. You need to be, or Sweden in the past, you need to be cautious. Yeah, it's not sensible to insult thermonuclear superpowers, whether they are the United States or Russia. Mm-hmm. And if you have enemies like Iran who are out to destroy your country, or their leaders, at least other people, by and large, were not, but the leaders were, it behoves you to have cautious, sensible policies, even or especially rather, in dealing with your enemies. But in America, the Jewish community is very large and very diffuse and very assimilated. And the younger generation of American Jews, apart from ultra-Orthodox Jews, who are a far smaller minority than, of course, they historically claim to be, almost all young American Jews support Mr. Mamdani or people like Mr. Mamdani. So in New York City alone, you are going to have 4 fiercely anti-AIPAC, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel Republican, the Democratic new congressmen, representatives in the House of Representatives elected in November. It is now a mathematical certainty. And if, God forbid, anything were to happen to them, if they were to be eliminated, then other candidates, at least as radically on the left, or apparently radically on the left as they are, will come in too. So first you had Mayor Mamdani, then you had an anti-Zionist mayor in Minneapolis. And as far as I can tell, the Jewish people are not leaving Minneapolis in their droves, or West Coast cities like Seattle. They're not leaving, because these are political and foreign policy statements which large numbers of Jewish people, and clearly large majorities of younger Jewish people, support themselves and help put these people there. This is the political reality. You can love it, you can welcome it, you can hate it, but it's
Marty,
real.
just kind of summing up here, we've got,
yeah,
I mean, it's
sorry, the last key point is this. We've gone further in Michigan because Mr. El-Sayed has won a primary, not for the House, but for the Senate. Right. And AIPAC was terrified of him getting in, and they poured tens of millions of dollars into his opponent's campaign, and the opponent still lost. It was a very narrow race, and the number of voters who were committed was small. But Michigan has a very large Arab community, and it's got a history for being isolationist and suspicious in global terms, going back to the days of Henry Ford in the 1920s and 1930s. And Ford was a real and very ugly anti-Semite and a Hitler lover. But the point is that none of those things are true of Mr. El-Sayed. Mr. El-Sayed is now virtually certain to become a senator from there. And you see even the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, one of the 2 most powerful Democratic political leaders in the Democratic Party in the whole United States, has already just said that if or when the 4 anti-Israel, AIPAC opposing Democrats who won their primaries in New York City alone are elected, he will welcome them into the Democratic caucus in the American Parliament, in the House of Representatives.
Right.
This is an enormous sea change.
Right.
This election is going to see the transformation of the Democratic Party on a national scale, both domestically and in foreign policy.
So isn't that all quite encouraging? Because this is in line with what we believe in foreign policy. I mean, we don't know what the Republican Party is going to look like in 2028. Apparently, I read this morning in the Washington Post exclusive that Trump favors J.D. Vance for 2028. Apparently, he was Marco Rubio was his favorite, but that could be just game playing with the media. So they've got J.D. Vance as a Republican, and then we got anti-war Democrats. I mean, that's incredibly good news. And even if it wasn't J.D. Vance, but someone more, traditional right-wing Republican warmonger, if you like, the left, the Democratic Party will pull them into anti-war positions. So that means, I mean, the analysis that we're having is probably being made in London, not least, Moscow and Berlin, and it signals very much a return to America before it became a diplomatic power. I mean, like almost like the America from before World War One, an agricultural republic sort of thing, and leaving the Europeans to fend for themselves. Just say 2 minutes to wind up on that.
I hope you're right, bless you. I'm much less optimistic. In Germany and in Britain, especially, they are besotted with the idea of the God King like America under Harry Truman that came out of World War II. They cannot see beyond that. And to my amazement, this obsession, I'm quite old, as you know. There was a lot of criticism and skepticism and fear of America in Britain and Germany and in France in the 1960s over Vietnam and after the Cuban Missile Crisis and the murders of President Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and Dr. King. A lot of fear, a lot of nervousness, a lot of disgust at Nixon. But from the 1980s onwards, the old belief, the huge, passionate, blind faith in America, that we would always be wise, that we would always protect them, that we were greater than gods, that we could do anything, came back. They believed our rhetoric, and they still do today, and that's very, very dangerous. And I don't believe Berlin or London or Paris or certainly not Brussels, are waking up at all to this. I wish they were. Right. I mean, you and I should hammer on the doors of them. But the change is coming in America.
Right.
It is. I call my book Cycles of Change, and the change is coming. Read my book, folks, and especially the last chapters. The change is coming. It will take a while.
You've written the headline of the podcast here. Change is coming, folks, and check out Marty's excellent book there. Thank you so much, Marty. See you later. Great.